Welcome to R&R Living Life. In this episode, Rick and I make our way to Mitta Mitta, a beautiful little hamlet at the junction of the Mitta Mitta River and Snowy Creek, nestled in the 80-kilometre long Mitta Mitta Valley. It was going to be another day where I thought we were going in circles. What a way to start the day, by watching the parrots and galahs that came to feed on the grass seeds outside our van. Such an enjoyable morning. Our first point of interest today was the town of Mitta Mitta. We again made our way along a small section of the Murray Valley Highway to Bryant's Gap Road and then onto the Lockhart's Gap Road, where we stopped, as Rick and I had thought that it would be a great place to look down into the valley. But all we got were great views of the power lines. As we continued along Lockhart's Gap Road, it took us through cleared farming land, with dairies close to the road. The smoke haze was quite thick in places, but added to the views, as in some places it hung quite thickly in the valleys, while in more open country the wind had carried most of it away. As we neared Tallangatta, we began to see snippets of the Mitta Mitta River. We then joined the Omeo Highway and continued following the river into the Mitta Mitta Valley. Closer to Eskdale, we stopped at Katie Peters Reserve to check out the Tallangatta Fish Habitat Enhancement Project that aims at restoring fish habitat and increasing the fish population by improving the survival rates and spawning opportunities for native fish in the river. Large rocks known as rock seeding and timber structures known as lankers have been installed in the river to create overhead cover and resting areas for the fish. Though Rick and I are not fisher people, we were interested to see the project as it was trying to improve the waterway. We stopped in Eskdale, established in 1860, to check out the information booth. Eskdale is situated near the confluence of the Mitta Mitta River and Little Snowy Creek in the Mitta Mitta Valley, set amongst the foothills of Mount Bogong, with wide river flats providing good dairying and grazing land, backed by ranges covered with forest country. European pastoralists arrived in the valley in 1835 and established cropping as the main industry. The river meanders across a wide valley with extensively cleared floodplains for much of our journey. In some sections of the road we were travelling along the banks of the river, while at other times along the edge of the floodplains. It really was stunning country. We could see large areas of the natural mountain environments, heavily timbered forests across the floodplains. Alluvial gold was discovered in 1851, inflating the population to several hundred itinerant miners and helping to establish the township of Granite Flat. Dairying had been introduced into the catchment just prior to 1900, by which time mining had virtually ceased, with the town becoming the centre for dairying in the Mitta Mitta Valley. A butter factory was opened in about 1892 and closed in 1968. Dairying extended southwest along the Little Snowy Creek. We continued following the Mitta Mitta River that flows into the southern arm of the Hume Dam, all the way to Mitta Mitta, with the river catchment above the township surrounded by about 70% mountains and the remainder steep forested hills and valleys. Mitta Mitta is nestled between the twin mountains of Mount Misery and Mount Welcome. The town owes its existence to gold, and the name was taken from the Grand River that was first discovered by explorers Hume and Hovell in 1824 on their southward trek. Mitta Mitta was originally named Junction Snowy Creek, or the Junction, and later, in 1876, was officially proclaimed Mitta Mitta. The location at the southern end of Mount Misery and Mount Welcome provided access through the valley to Omeo and mining rushes to the Wombat, Lightning, Dart and Mount Wills goldfields, initially via bridle tracks and later with improved tracks and roads. with Mitta Mitta becoming the natural site for a settlement, with a police station erected in 1859 and the first post office in 1870. Early pastoralists had arrived from north of the Murray River into the Mitta Mitta Valley in 1835, and by 1837 had taken up the fertile land in the valleys and surrounding bushlands. Cattle and then cropping were the first industries. Then, as farmers adjusted to changing demands and opportunities, many dairy farms were established along the extent of the Mitta Valley. Cropping was important, although regular valley flooding made it difficult. Some of the first tobacco harvested in Australia came from the Mitta Mitta Valley, and vineyards were popular before a small insect pest destroyed the crops in the 1890s. From the 1900s, dairying and some pig farming was strong until around 2012, when the number of dairies decreased due to small, uneconomical holdings, problems with the local cooperative, and market conditions. Beef cattle is now the major activity, although new agricultural startups, including hazelnuts and mushroom growing, is occurring. I was interested to find out where the Mitta Mitta headwaters started, and found that it flows into Lake Dartmouth. Dartmouth Dam is located midstream on the Mitta Mitta, Gibbo and Dart rivers. From this storage, water is transferred into two distinct waterways, the Mitta Mitta and Darth rivers, with water from the Mitta Mitta turning northwards and meandering across a wider valley with extensively cleared floodplains, picking up water from a plethora of creeks and streams until it flows into the southern arm of Lake Hume. The lower Mitta Mitta River does not directly join the Murray River, but both rivers are impounded as they flow into Lake Hume near Tallangatta. We continued along the Omeo Highway, crossing over Peter's Bridge on the Mitta Mitta River at Tallandoon, and then along the edge of some forest country and cleared farmland, past Tallangatta South and Pigs Point, before joining the Murray Valley Highway that would take us to Old Tallangatta. We crossed the floodplains of Tallangatta Creek on Lake Road, and then checked out Old Tallangatta. I was surprised to see that there were still quite a few people living there, as I had assumed that all residents had been moved to the new town. As we entered Old Tallangatta, we passed the Tallangatta Butter Factory and Creamery, one of the first northeastern dairy cooperatives to be established in Victoria. The ruins of the red brick building with typical dairy ventilation along the ridged roofs just above the flood level of Lake Hume was built on the original site of the 1892 factory in 1934. From there we took the Georges Creek Road, surrounded by rolling hills and very dry cleared farmland, to the Great River Road near Tallangatta on the southern shoreline of Lake Hume. Tallangatta was named after the Tallangatta pastoral run of 1836 and is situated in undulating country rising eastwards to hilly ranges. In the mid-1930s, Tallangatta's river flats were inundated by Lake Hume, leaving only the hilly grazing country. It was hard to imagine that the lake ever was so high, with the current water level being so low. At the scenic lookout, Bridge to the Moon, the remains of the Hawkesview Bridge, later named Tallangatta Bridge, lie beneath the waters of Lake Hume. The 64-metre timber truss structure was located just below the meeting of Bowner Creek and the Murray River at a site known as Gold Creek Ford. Before the bridge was constructed, residents wishing to travel directly to Albury had to either ford the river or use a small rowboat and make their horses wade across. In the late 1800s, residents of Tallangatta and Bethanga had been campaigning for 10 years to have a bridge built, but were told by the minister at the time they might as well try and get a bridge to the moon. Eventually the bridge was built and officially opened in 1895. It replaced an older, unreliable crossing, shortening travel times and becoming a vital link for communities on both sides of the river. Unfortunately, as water levels began to rise in Hume Dam in the 1920s, and with the construction of a bigger and higher Bethanga Bridge in 1927, the approaches to the Tallangatta Bridge were submerged for the first time in 1929 and partially demolished in 1932. The bridge remained underwater until a severe drought in 2007 saw the dam levels drop to 1%, leading to the foundations of the bridge becoming visible for the first time in over 75 years. Further along, we stopped to check out the Bethanga Bridge that straddles the New South Wales and Victorian borders, making it the only built structure shared by both states. The spectacular bridge was a crucial part of the Hume Dam project, designed to connect communities that would otherwise have been isolated by the rising waters of the dam. When a second flood submerged the nearby Tallangatta Bridge in 1930, cutting off communities, engineers had to quickly secure local planks to finish the deck of the 752-metre-long Pratt Truss Road Bridge. The bridge comprises 9 spans of 82 metres each that stands 37 metres above the flooded valley of the Murray River, now part of Hume Reservoir. With the bridge hastily completed, there has never been an official ribbon-cutting ceremony. The bridge was upgraded in 1961 with a 7.7 metre wide concrete waffle slab deck, which also included raising the deck and truss structure by 300 millimetres to accommodate the increased capacity of Lake Hume, which was nearly doubled around that time. This steel truss bridge connects the Victorian towns of Bellbridge and Bethanga with Albury in New South Wales. Traffic from the Riverina Highway travels across the bridge to connect with the Great River Road or Murray Valley Highway. This joint venture between New South Wales and Victoria was part of the Hume Dam project, a key element of the River Murray Waters Agreement that was put in place in 1915 by the Victorian, New South Wales, South Australian and federal governments to regulate the flow of the Murray River as a provision against drought and to ensure that the 3 states received their agreed share of water. Over its lifetime, the Bethanga Bridge has played a vital role in connecting communities across the Murray. After crossing over and returning across the Bethanga Bridge, we stopped at the Great River Scenic Lookout at Bellbridge, a rural town dating from the early 1960s and 70s, when farming land of Bellmere was subdivided and a township grew. We followed Lake Road around the shoreline to Currajong Gap Road between Bellbridge and Bethanga, where we took a short but steep windy road to the scenic lookout at the Gap, with some incredible views of Lake Hume and the Lake Hume dam wall. From the lookout we made our way to Bethanga, surrounded by the Murray River in the north and the Mitta Mitta River to the south. Land was taken up by squatters in the 1830s, with the area known as the Bethanga and Tallangatta Runs. Gold was discovered in 1875, leading to the establishment of the township. When mining ceased in the latter half of the 20th century, the town's population gradually diminished. I was so glad to have stopped in Bethanga, as Rick and I had the most delicious hamburger at the general store, and at a very cheap price. My mouth still waters when I think of them months later. On leaving Bethanga, we made our way back to Lake Road that took us along the shoreline and then through farmland around the edge of the Hume Dam. What had begun as a bitumen road turned to gravel, and Rick was in his element. Up steep climbs, round sharp corners, short straight stretches, the journey was thrilling. Even the small corrugations did not dampen our spirits. With views over Lake Hume changing around each corner and the steep hills on the other side, it was turning into an afternoon to remember. We stopped at Tallangatta Lookout with views of Tallangatta across the lake. On some of the dead trees we could see where the high water mark gets to when the lake is filled. Such a very long way from where the water level was today. As we stood and looked out across the lake, with its very low water level, It was hard to envisage what the lake would be like when full, and I began to wonder when it was. After research, I found out that at the time of our visit the dam was at 52% capacity, which both Rick and I found hard to believe from what we were seeing. The last time it was said to be full was in late 2021, while prior to that it reached full capacity in 2016 and previous to that in 1983. It really would have been an amazing sight to see it then. After my research, I began to wonder, with 4 major dams, 16 storage weirs and 15 navigable locks along its length, I began to wonder if it can continue supplying the water required for current usage of irrigation, domestic household use and power generation. It was only now, as we stood overlooking the lake, that I began to put together that some of the water in Lake Hume was coming from the headwaters of the Mitta Mitta River that originates in the alpine areas of the Great Dividing Range, so is fed by snowmelts each year with varying rainfall, as well as the Murray River catchment, so vastly different from northern Australia that relies on rainwater to fill the river systems and dams. It is estimated that Lake Hume holds approximately 6 times the volume of water in Sydney Harbour when full, but typically falls to less than 1/3 capacity by March each year. Such a huge volume of water being directed and redirected across Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia. There is always something new to learn. From the lookout we continued along the shoreline that would take us back across Tallangatta Creek to the highway and back into Tallangatta. Another circuit completed through vastly different country with a scenic mix of rolling high country, vast riverine landscapes and alpine foothills with the Murray River and Lake Hume as central features, and historic bridges, national and state parks and charming small towns. Who could have asked for more? But there were still more places to see, but not for today. It was now time to return to Gidget and rest up for another day's exploring. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. Give us a thumbs up if you have, and leave a comment. Join us next episode as we return to Yakandanda and Beechworth. Stay safe and enjoy life. Cheers for now. Rick and Rosemary. R&R, living life.